Uh, Everybody, we're just going to wait a few minutes just for a few other people who are joining the room a little bit late. So just bear with us 1 second to let everybody in. Okay, I think we're ready to get started if everybody else is. I'd just like to welcome everybody today. It's such a pleasure to co-host a meeting with so many esteemed and learned guests, and also a fantastic set of panelists. We're very pleased to be co-hosting this webinar with Alt, and we're delighted to be welcoming so many of their members. Nankunda and the Alt team have been instrumental in setting this webinar up, and we're looking forward to a long and fruitful partnership with them over the years to come. This discussion is just the starting point of a number of webinars that we're running, not only in Africa, but across the rest of the world. We run them under the banner of Talk for Legal, and everyone is welcome wherever we may be speaking. Please follow us on LinkedIn and find out when the next webinar is happening. But today we focus on Africa, and we try to get to the bottom of why so much innovation is happening throughout the continent, how quickly legal professionals are reacting to legal tech and the tools that can help revolutionize their teams and their practice. I'm representing App4Legal, a legal practice management software solution that is sitting in the middle of everything good that is happening in legal tech right now. We have been in private practice law firms and all in-house legal teams for over 5 years now, and we represent all lawyers, from small to large firms and from banks to manufacturing companies. Our solution has been designed by lawyers, and every update that we've made over the last 5 years is because a lawyer has told us that is what is needed to happen. In the last 12 months, we've seen a massive period of hypergrowth across the whole of the world. But one of our fastest growing regions has been Africa. We have now made financial investment into our infrastructure throughout Africa, and we see the growth potential to be enormous. Just a little background on me. I've been working with law firms on sales and marketing strategies for a number of years, working with over 600 partners at over 15 different law firms. And I've seen firsthand how technology has changed the way that lawyers run their really busy lives. The ultimate aim in everything I have done is how to maximize potential. Now with App4Legal, I've found a solution that minimizes time wastage, organizes your matters, and most importantly, it saves you money through being efficient. At this stage, I'm going to hand over to Nankunda, who will be moderating today's discussion, and will be able to introduce herself and elaborate more.
Thank you, John, and thanks for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Nankunda Katangaza, and I'm the co-founder of the African Law and Tech Network, also known as the Alt Network. We at Alt are really pleased to be kicking this year off with this event and revisiting the theme with which we actually started the Alt Network back in 2017. Which is legal tech and its adoption in the African legal sector, and in particular in law firms. It's an added pleasure to be partnering with App4Legal, who are new members of the network, and we are grateful to them for the idea of having these conversations together, and also for an opportunity to bring along some of our other members to join us. So it's a bit of a reunion, really, LawPavilion and KTA advocates who have been with Alt from the very beginning. And it's also great to meet a new friend, Lex Chambers from Rwanda. When we created the Alt network, my colleagues and I were responding to a question and an observation that we had heard repeatedly from lawyers and law firms across the continent. With technology disrupting so many sectors and industries, was it inevitable that the same would happen to legal services? And if so, how? Were lawyers doomed to extinction, or were there new opportunities created for lawyers by technological innovation? Given the important role played by legal services in all aspects of a country's economic, social, political, and personal spheres, our view was that the latter was more likely. Little did we know then that a global event would radically change the way we work and live and drive many of those of us who work in the professional services sectors to our homes for months at a time. Some of us are actually still at home. So today's session is a rather timely one. We will be exploring the impact of the last year on innovation in legal tech on the continent and on the adoption and the likely prospects of accelerated digitization and digitalization of information and processes in African law firms. So I'm going to, let me introduce our other panelists very briefly. We have Ope Olugasa, who is the MD and CEO of LawPavilion, a Lagos-based legal tech provider that addresses the legal research needs of law firms, judiciary, and other institutions in the legal sector. We have Kenneth Muhangi, who is a managing partner at KTA Advocates Kampala, and Kenneth leads on their work on intellectual property and technology. KTA is a member firm of the East African network of firms that specialize in IP, known as Amani IP. And we also have Isaac Bizumuremyi, who is the founder and managing partner of Lex Chambers, which is a Kigali-based law firm. Isaac also heads the firm's corporate and commercial practice. So welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us. You can read more about each of our speakers in the brochure that accompanies the webinar. But for now, without any further ado, let's begin the discussion. So my first, this is just very quick housekeeping. We're just going to have a bit of a conversation, ask various questions and hear from our speakers. And then we'll have some time at the end for a Q&A with you, our delegates. So if you have any questions and any issues you want to raise, please use the Q&A in the Zoom app and put your questions to us throughout the session, and we will cover them at the end. So I'm going to start with talking about some of the issues that face the legal industry in terms of efficiency, productivity, and workload, and the extent to which technology can and has already made an impact on those. I'm going to start off with talking to Isaac. So Isaac, in your experience as a managing partner of a law firm, when it comes to efficiency, productivity, collaboration, communication, etc., what sort of problems would you say a typical lawyer faces?
Thank you, Nankunda. Well, there are issues that the legal professionals do face in their practice. First of all, we need to understand for the efficiency of legal services, there are multiple players. A lawyer alone without judiciary cannot do anything. That is very, well, how can I say? There's no tangible difference that a lawyer alone can do without the participation of others. We are talking of the judiciary, we are talking of the prosecution, we are talking of the criminal investigation bodies. So it needs for the technology to make a fundamental change in terms of efficiency and productivity, and to reduce the workload. All these players have to be at the same rate. But more importantly, the lawyers who are custodian of judiciary, particularly the courts, Now, the challenge that we, from my experience here in Rwanda that I've noted is that even though Rwanda is among the leading countries in Africa on IT infrastructure, but there is still capacity issues among the players that I talked about. We have judges, we have lawyers who are over 50, and so they still have this mindset, additional way of working, and so you find that they are not responsive to the demands of technological responses that requires for it to be efficient. So the point number one that I would say is that is an issue of capacity. Then the other point I would say is also the mindset, which requires time to for people to change. I wouldn't think that I would not expect that everyone will change overnight. But Rwanda has had a government which advances technology for about at least effectively the last 10 years. But when you look at the response in the legal sector, you find that it still faces the challenges of capacities. I remember that in about 2010, the judiciary had this booster that was, I think, called Africa Investment Climate Facility, something like that. So it introduced recording equipment in courts so that both the lawyers and the judges, whatever the business in the courtroom should be recorded. But the lower courts complied and were happy with it. But when it went to the Supreme Court, where we had this senior, both in age and in experienced judges, they couldn't cope up with it. And so basically that had to stall the whole project. The equipment were there, they are highly, very expensive, but they could not work. So the issue of mindset is the second legal challenge that I would mention, that it limits the efficiency of technology as well as the of the IT. So without the responsive mindset and the capacities, then activity remains low, as you would imagine. However, we have what would I say, we have an issue of infrastructure which is not related to capacities and the mindset. So Rwanda has tried to invest in technology infrastructure. So right now, I think we are over 90% coverage with the optic fiber. But with that, technology will not, even with the presence of infrastructure, as that, it will not work when the equipment used are not responsive to the infrastructure. So my experience is that I've seen that in courts, you find due to procurement procedures, particularly the cost-based procurement, you find that the suppliers supplying computers offering low prices would mostly be preferred. But you find that these gadgets, they have low, very small processors, all those they are required to speed up, the use of technology in that sense. These days, since the COVID started last year, we've been having online pleadings, online trials, both in criminal and in civil matters. But you find that for a lawyer in his office has the best internet connection and has the best computer with high RAM and a good processor. But the judge in the court has the other way around. So these are challenges that we find that I find that are facing the legal industry in terms of efficiency, productivity, and this then, when they fail, when technology fails because of those factors, then it has to defer the trials, hence bringing up the workload. With those challenges that I've said, I would say that Africa now is not an Africa that I think I was born at the time. It has a high pressure of youth that are very minded on technology, and this pressure really compels the governments to respond to the technological need, not in the legal sector, but also in even administrative functions. I would say that presently, Africa is, as John stated earlier, Africa is a very promising continent in terms of technology. We have population is a good population with high figures of youth. I think is a very good input, and also even the governance in Africa is positively changing and at a very fast rate. So they are more thinking of what best they can offer to their population. And I think technology is among the fastest and the least on the top of the agenda of every African government. We have examples.
Isaac, sorry, I'm going to cut you off for a minute because we've got a number of questions. I just want to sort of keep the conversation going, if that's okay with you, please.
Thank you.
So we'll get back to you because we've got some other things that we definitely want to cover with you. And I actually wanted to take this to Kenneth because Kenneth, one of the things that Isaac raised was the gap between the judiciary's knowledge and use of technology and the lawyers and you know, in different layers. And I know that, Kenneth, you do quite a bit of training of the judiciary, and you spend quite a bit of your time in sort of talking to the judiciary about the use of tech and using and how they can be better, build their own capacity. So Mike, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but to follow on from that thought, you, I imagine, would have been in a better position in terms of adapting to the pandemic's requirements. And so I wonder if you feel that your firm was prepared for you know, moving indoors and that sort of thing. I know you were also moving offices at the same time. So how do you think that your firm responded to that? And to what extent was technology something that assisted with that?
Okay, thank you for the question, Nankunda. Good afternoon, good morning, the listeners and viewers, wherever you are. I think first, before I answer the question, I just wanted to, I hope it's okay to condole with my brothers and sisters in Tanzania over the loss of their president. May he rest in peace. And yes, I just want to thank you and Joe for putting this together. So to answer the question, I think it's good that I'm following from what Isaac had mentioned. If you don't have an ecosystem where all the players are actually at the same level, then you will have issues. So for us in particular, we were lucky that our firm was or is a more tech-leaning firm. So we're already employing or using many of the tools that are popular now. But it helped to have that mindset because, as you mentioned, once COVID started and we had lockdown, and it was difficult or impossible in most instances to be able to service clients properly, to be able to go to registries, to get things done. And that's why we're lawyers, and that's why we're were paid. So that was a very big problem. And as a result of that, we've seen so many law firms, not only in Uganda, but all over the world as well, sadly close their doors, and many lawyers as well out of business. So what we're discussing is actually really timely in the sense that for every law firm, I do believe that adopting and using technology is no longer something that is optional, it's something that is mandatory. And for us in particular, it helped even using the ordinary social media platforms, because if you have discussions over platforms like WhatsApp or Telegram to discuss internal matters, to allocate work, to find out how work is going, and then to also do the same with clients. Those tools, in my view, are cheap in the sense that if you're looking at it from the economic sense, of course, we can have a wider discussion as to the social and mental impact of using such platforms, but that is a separate discussion. But at least from the point of ensuring that that all the lawyers discuss amongst themselves, discuss with each other and interact with the clients, that helped. And then we also have a software, a platform where we scanned all our files, all our documents. And so anyone that is working on a matter will work on a matter based on a system, which we call a smart case. So that also really helped, because I could be at home like I am now, and then I'll be able to access any file that I want, be able to send a client an invoice, be able to give a client an update. So that also really helped. And I would really strongly recommend using apps like that, using apps like App4Legal for law firms to be able to make it easier for them to do work and also to be able to interact with clients. But as Isaac had mentioned, of course, then after COVID, now we also had proceedings going on in court, although albeit virtually. And there were still teething problems in the sense that although we also have very good internet infrastructure, it could be better, but at least we have good infrastructure. You find that some judicial officers either are not really tech adept, or even if they are, they have challenges with some of their tools. So in Uganda, for example, last year but one, our judiciary took a bold move of going digital. That we initiated the electronic case information management system that would allow lawyers and practitioners and judicial officers to be able to receive documents online and also to be able to serve documents online. Although that is yet to really get traction or yet to be rolled out across the board, but that really gave the backdrop to, or gave comfort to judicial officers to try and start hearing matters virtually. We already have infrastructure in place. One, with the law, we have our audio-visual rules that allow court users to be able to have virtual proceedings online, especially in instances where it is impractical. For example, in criminal matters, to bring a suspect or an accused person to court. So really, that was the same infrastructure that was used. And then we saw in most instances as well, use of applications like Zoom as well. But the challenges are still with the users, to be able to tell these 60 plus guys, look, you can be able to get a Zoom application online, please accept these documents. But I am happy, as you mentioned, we have had trainings done to these judges. I actually have one scheduled for next week where we'll be training a Court of Appeal on handling electronic evidence. And we saw it in our presidential election petition as well, that everyone in Uganda was able to log on to the Zoom application to be able to listen and contribute to the proceedings for anyone that was interested in our presidential election petition. So I do see a move forward in regards to the ecosystem, which is the judicial ecosystem or the legal ecosystem embracing technology. But I still strongly feel that we need to have more conversations like this to see what are the challenges, because it is one thing, for example, to build roads and infrastructure, but it won't help if the people at the time are using horses. So, horses riding on paved roads, that may seem like a waste. So with us as well, we spend all this money getting all this infrastructure, coming up with all these solutions and applications. But as long as we don't have more judicial officers or more lawyers understanding how to use these platforms or how best to fully utilize them, then those will always remain problems. Thank you.
Thanks, Kenneth. So it sounds to me like there's a sort of an open attitude in a lot of cases where lawyers are concerned, but even still, we've had some casualties along the way. But there are gaps higher up and across the sector that mean that some adoption in one place does not necessarily solve all the problems. So Jon, in terms of the challenges that you may have come across in terms of getting lawyers to adopt legal tech and even, you know, adapt to it and add it to their offer? What are some of the challenges that you've seen in your African context and even beyond, actually?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting because Kenneth actually raised a point there that I'll bring up. The biggest thing that we find is the phrase, "We've always done it this way." And that is an issue that many industries face, but mainly the legal fraternity, which is that, you know, lawyers have been around a lot longer than any tech solution, and they are embedded in the way that they work. So this is the way I've always done it. This is the way that I was taught at law school. This is the way that I've have to do my work. I have to do it this way. I have to put my physical file into a filing cabinet. I have to give this to a junior. That has to happen. And the people that are really growing fast are the ones that challenge that. And the firms that we work with especially are challenging the norms, because there are efficiencies to be had at every step of the way. It's kind of important that law firms really channel their processes and make sure that any tech that they have works comfortably with the way that they work. It shouldn't be the tech that's driving the way that the solution happens, but actually the other way around. So the client should be saying, this is the way my working process is at the moment, and I need a tech solution that is going to enable me to work better, smarter, faster, harder. Ultimately, every tech solution is there with one ultimate aim, which is how can I make my life easier? And I feel for many of the people here today and on our panelists, because I live and breathe legal tech, and every single day I'm seeing another article or another solution that promises this and promises that. So it's a point of working out where your processes are, not saying that we've always done it that way. The other thing to add in is I'm too busy, which again is a standard for law firms especially, which is I simply don't have the time. I don't have the time to implement. I don't have the resources in order to do that. So, and again, this is something that we've dealt with very heavily at App4Legal, which is making a process really simple, holding your hand during implementation, making sure that everybody is trained, everybody understands what the tech is going to be doing, and everybody has a voice to make sure that it works in the way that they want it to work.
Lovely, thanks, John. I mean, I will ask you in a minute to say a little bit more about App4Legal's specific services, but I wanted to raise the issue of cost for a number of law firms. There's a perception that technology is expensive and they won't be able to afford something that they can roll out for a whole firm. And I'd like both you and Ope to comment on that. But Ope, I wanted to ask you a bit more about LawPavilion, because you've been in the market for a long time and you're always being innovative and creative. Every time you turn around, there's a new LawPavilion product. So your most recent WhatsApp legal research product. So same question to you. What do you see, what have been the barriers in terms of lawyers adopting your legal research technology?
Thank you very much, Nankunda. From what we have seen here, I tend to just agree with all the previous speakers. One of the main challenges, one really has been the mindset of, okay, this is how we've been doing this. And then, usually when you introduce something new, there's always that tendency to not just want to adopt it. So that mindset, but really from the lockdown, has changed a lot, even beyond and before then. I mean, there's been a lot of changes, there's been a lot of adoption, and it's really gaining traction. So in my experience, I think adoption of technology within the legal space is becoming much better in Africa. It can be, of course, there's room for bigger improvement, but it's really getting much better, especially right here in Nigeria. The other thing really is also the issue of cost. And I know you also mentioned something about that. Now, for us also in Nigeria, it's the infrastructure. Those infrastructural deficiencies could be a major issue. But one thing I have learned is if the mindset changes as long as there is a way and there's a will, there will always be a way. So now those are some of the things that we think the legal tech community needs to start looking at. Okay, what are the challenges? How can we creatively solve these challenges? Within the space we have. And I've seen a lot of improvement, really, and I'm just eager to see much more.
Thanks, Ope. I was at a conference not so long ago. Actually, it was a long time ago because it was a live conference. And somebody described the legal profession as the last medieval guild that was still around today, you know, and I think, you know, you've all alluded to this. It's just a known thing, isn't it? There's always people on the outside who are willing to change, but largely there's a sort of protectionist attitude and a view of not wanting to change anything because it's always been, and, you know, also it's a sort of fear of losing your bread and butter rather than thinking about, you know, the next thing and how you can make that, you know, you look at your processes and improve them. And I think that actually does touch on what people are learning in law school and what people are coming out with. So you take some young people who are very tech savvy and completely happy with phones and computers and smartphones, then they go to law school and it's like they're just narrowed and they lose all their interest in tech savviness. And it's as if the technology is fine for personal things, but not fine for work things. So on that point, Jon, I'd like you've told us about your product being quite straightforward and simple and you help people through it. Tell us a little bit more about App4Legal.
Yeah, no problem at all. App4Legal is a full solution, legal practice management software solution. It's fully customizable and it's modular in its design. The most important thing is actually just looking at the vast continent of Africa. The way that a law firm is working in Johannesburg is completely different to the way that a law firm is working in Rwanda, is working in Ghana, in Nigeria. We have to take that on board, and we are a solution that works for every single law firm, but also in-house legal teams. So of course, that's another completely different set of lawyers. Modular in its design means that we can customize it to exactly the way that law firms work. It is corporate matters as well as litigation. App4Legal is CRM and task management. It is a client portal where you can speak to your clients real time and collaborate together, which of course in this difficult pandemic period has been so hard. I know of one particular law firm in Africa where they're delivering the post that's coming into the office by hand every single day to various different lawyers. You know, that's not the best of processes, and actually collaboration can happen with a great tech solution. So the thing that we like to do is we sit down with all of our potential clients. We talk about the solution in its entirety before then understanding at first how that they want the solution to work for them. And then we work through a very easy implementation process, which again is run with every law firm that we work with. We provide full implementation and training. We're very transparent on costs, which again has been raised a few times already today. Everybody thinks that this digital transformation or this tech enablement is going to take years and it's going to cost me a fortune. As soon as you take those two things away, we're very transparent on our pricing. If you just need to go to app4legal.com, you'll be able to see the pricing there. In front, it's transparent in the extreme. We like to make sure that legal teams have a system and a solution that is ultimately just going to save them time, effort, and get them billing more and more organized so that they're not wasting any more time. Oh.
Oops.
Wow.
Thanks, Jon. Ope, same question to you. Can you just talk us through a little bit on LawPavilion and your legal research tools, but I'm particularly interested in your most recent one that you launched recently.
Oh, okay, thank you, Nankunda. So yes, LawPavilion, let me start by saying that in our approach to the industry, to legal tech, is providing specific answers to law practice, to issues in law practice. So Most of the times we go after, okay, these are the issues we are facing here in Africa, and then we try to address them. So initially, what we started with was we discovered that 50% of legal time is spent on research. And most of the questions we're hearing from law firms is how do I become more efficient? The industry is getting more competitive. So how can I do more with less time? Not within they save less time. Then the issue of productivity, and that's a little bit more pronounced now when people have to work remotely and you're not even sure whether everyone in the firm is doing what you want them to do. So now what LawPavilion does, or what we did initially, was to start with legal research. We automated legal research. We built database around that, and then built a search engine so that in seconds you can have issues of law. But that was in the initial stage. We moved quickly to upping the ante, and then we moved to legal analytics, where, okay, we don't only give you the relevant authorities, but we give you if there are issues, if there are conflicting authorities, if there are exceptions, if there are history of each authority in the jurisprudence, especially here in Nigeria. And then, of course, annotation of the laws of the Federation. But we moved a little further than that now. We also saw that we have infrastructural challenges in Nigeria and issue of cost. So now that's why we introduced the WhatsApp version, because following the trend, so that a number of lawyers, even though yes, there are technological challenges, but everyone is on WhatsApp. So we just moved it to the platform where everyone is comfortable. So now that's what certainly we released that one, that you can conduct your legal research on WhatsApp, and the uptake has been impressive, because those that couldn't afford, that didn't have internet access, now can just quickly conduct search on WhatsApp. And then we also certainly released one on within Microsoft Word. So you have within your Microsoft Word, you can actually, as you're typing, you can conduct your legal research and put in templates. And these are the things we've been doing, essentially to answer the question of efficiency within the system and the question of productivity, albeit in an affordable way, taking into consideration the technological challenges we have here in Africa. And I think it's been impressive. We will keep pushing further, and it's actually the system, the industry is really adopting it, and the traction is impressive.
That's great. Thanks very much, Ope. So Isaac, I'm going to ask you the next question. In light of what you've heard already and some of the products that people are already using, including yourself, how would you see the future, what the African law firm is going to look like post-COVID? What's your view of that?
Well, my view is that probably at this time we cannot know how certain the certain direction which we can predict going to be. But what is sure is that basically within the next 2 to 3 years, I'm looking at probably more firms in Africa going more digital than before. It's not only, there are a number of factors that are going to contribute to that. Right now, what COVID has taught us and what others are slowly learning is that now office can, a law firm can be virtual, can be more virtual than a hybrid. So when lawyers are thinking of cutting costs, they'll be thinking of going digital. They'll be thinking of going for technology. So right now, as from my own perspective, I'm planning the next 1 year. Basically, I think of having many associates from all over the world, without necessarily being, requiring them to come to my country, where I have to meet visa, transport, accommodation issues. So I'm trying to appreciate the good deeds of the technology. And then with that, I'm thinking of reducing the space of my rent. So if renting maybe how many, 200 square meters, I'm going to cut them to 50. So now, we've got a good example in Kenya. There's a I think you know them. The founder of App. Linda explained to us how she started setting up a virtual offer, and she does not regret. She finds it very helpful. So I think that what COVID has taught us is that our mind has to think faster on how we can live, try to live on how we lived during lockdowns. During lockdowns, we did not cease to work as lawyers, but because of lockdown, we are forced, in our mind, we are forced to find ways, alternative ways, and technology was the first priority. So I'm thinking that very soon we are going, law firms are going to come from analog to digital age. I think that's what I can say. I just before I think I end on that. In Rwanda, just last month on 1st of February, the Supreme Court passed a judgment in which I would call is going to be a case law. In that judgment, it was a requirement by the Constitution that Parliament requiring to sit sit in their plenary outside their designated buildings, they can seek Supreme Court approval. And what the Supreme Court did was to approve that now the Parliament can meet via technology. So I think this is a case law that is going to be applied even in other forms of law. It will require amendments of procedure, the rules of procedure. It require amendment of the law of evidence. So all these to be able to enable basically people work with than the traditional way of face-to-face. I think that's what I can simply say on that.
Thank you, Isaac. So it sounds to me like one of the things that you've talked about is the choices and the flexibility that legal tech brings to a law firm when it's thinking ahead and planning ahead. And indeed, as you're saying, you could actually have an international offer with associates from different places that don't actually have to be sitting in Kigali or in your office, and you can provide services in different ways. And I think that's very true, and I really applaud that sort of approach. Kenneth, I wanted to ask you kind of a similar question in terms of that the choices and the ability to do new and different things. Can you just give us a bit more specific on the ways in which any particular legal tech or digital additions that you have undertaken at KTA that have been transformative for you, and especially what you're seeing in the sort of short to medium term post-COVID kind of impacts in the broader sector in Kenya, in Uganda, but also in terms of your Amani network across the 3 East African countries?
Thank you, Nankunda. I think for us, as I had mentioned earlier, we have a platform which we call Smart Case, which allows us to access any document within the file remotely, anywhere in the world, as long as you have a stable internet connection, at least. And so that really has transformed the way that we work, in the sense that one, we have reduced the reliance on paper and have now fully, as I said, embrace digital, in the sense that if you have any invoice or anything of the sort, even for clients, it's usually sent electronically from the system. If you are sending an update to a client, the norm in the past has been to write formal letters, which we really enjoyed, because then write all the English that we know. But now really just a short and succinct email is really what works. And our system is also really able to update a client even without having the input from the lawyer themselves. So once the lawyer generates an update, then the supervisor or the partner who is overseeing the matter will also get an update. And then in some instances, in certain instances, if the update is also for the client as well, the client will also receive an update. So that really has made it easier for us to always keep in touch with our clients, and always because there's a risk, especially if you're handling litigation matters, that because of the lag between cases, that sometimes you find you will talk to a litigation client maybe twice or thrice a year, because that's when the matter is coming up. But how that has changed is now, because updates are done weekly, or at least in the list monthly, whether it's from the lawyer themselves or from our business development manager, the client themselves now will be able to get an update even when there is really nothing to update. And that is really important, that connection with the client. And then of course, with other tools like Asana that assist with organizing tasks, that also really has helped. And then of course, the use of applications like Zoom or the rest. But I also really wouldn't want to paint a picture that, with embracing all these things, everything is moving forward hunky-dory. I think with everything else, we also need to understand, especially from the discussions that we've been having before with all the speakers regarding the mind shift change. If I was to use another example, if you have a child and you put them in school early, and then you have another child who's put in school 2 years later, the honest understanding is that the child who's put in school early perhaps will have a leg up, one advantage over one who joins later. And that's what I think is happening now. And that's the same discussion that's happening in places like the US over reparations, for example, whether blacks who were enslaved should be able to get reparations. And why those particular discussions are important is that although we have all these systems in place, we need to understand that culture is still a very, very big issue. So although technology has helped us be able to move forward and interact with our clients, we still have to be cognizant of the fact that having a Ugandan in particular, since I'm speaking from Uganda, be able to effectively handle a matter from home the same way that they'd handle it from their desk, that's still something that, we still have a lot to do to change the mindset and push and change the culture. But as I mentioned, at least for us, the advantage we had was we're intentional about the people we're hiring, and there's the people that had to be one tech adept because we are a technology law firm. So with us, it was a little easier doing that, but I do recognize that this is a very big problem. The culture is a big problem for many firms, and it's one thing to discuss all the things that we're discussing, but we need to be truthful and honest with ourselves that this is something that will take a little bit more time to be able to, to adopt, because although COVID has allowed us to embrace all these tools, the truth is once the fear is gone, once life goes back to normal, kid you not, I strongly feel or believe that people may go back to how they were doing things before. So I think there's still a lot to be done in ensuring that although we embrace all these techniques that have, helped us, especially firms like ours, that we still need to have a lot more sensitization for people to understand that this is the reason why we're using these tools. It's not because of COVID alone. It's not because, of this particular problem that's happening right now. No, it's the understanding that technology will actually facilitate and smoothen your processes. Technology will allow you to interact with clients easier and faster. So intention is one thing, but understanding is important. So intention and understanding are two things that I believe go hand in hand. And it also helps that even when we're looking at things like love, if you love someone, intention is one thing, but understanding the person and being able, that's what will allow a relationship to flourish, for example. So using the same analogy really with the law, it's having the intention to be able to use technology, but the understanding why you should use technology, not to plug a problem or patch it up, but actually, if you have that understanding across the board, I do believe that that's what sets a culture that will then go on from generation to generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. That's very well put. In fact, Ope alluded to this earlier, and he said the pandemic certainly accelerated the adoption of technology, but there isn't any sort of guarantee necessarily that people won't sort of resort to their old ways, or to saying, well, you know, I spent a bit of money on that in order to work from home, but actually I'm just going to go back to, you know, hiring a lot of baby lawyers who I can pay a pittance to do that work anyway, you know. So, and actually, interestingly, we have a question in the Q&A, which I'm going to go to because it fits in with this conversation. And our questioner is actually somebody I know, Michael Breedy from Northern Ireland, who is saying that in England, Wales recently, the LCJ has tried to nudge lawyers back to in-person hearings. And his question is, how likely are the courts in Africa to embrace remote hearings going forward? Are the judges as keen on technology as the lawyers are? And I know we've covered that a little bit in the beginning of this conversation about where the gaps are, but I think I'm just going to ask Ope if you have any thoughts on that, because obviously, and actually there's a subsequent question which is to do with courts, so I'll add it. Don't you think over-dependence on legal tech, I see where this is going, will affect advocacy, which is the hallmark of a litigation lawyer? So that's, you know, we hear those kind of questions. Ope, do you have any thoughts on those?
Yes, thank you, Nankunda. So true, I perfectly agree with what Kenneth has said earlier, that there's this likelihood that because of pandemic, a lot of people moved out of panic. But then as the pandemic recedes, there's tendency to want to go back to our old ways. But I will first quickly say something, that the future of legal practice, as we see it and as we interact with people, is that competition will increase. And that competition will likely not just increase within countries, it will increase internationally. So with the advent of APSA, for example, the competition will even increase pan-Africa. And then there will likely be mergers across African states, law firms, and all those ones. And then what will eventually play out is that law practice automation will be the differentiator. So you're going to see a law firm that boasts of 30, 50 lawyers, and then they are not able to churn out the same amount of work as a law firm that has just about 5 or 10 lawyers, because these ones are using tools that enable each person to operate like 10 people in the other firm. And these are differentiators we're going to see, and the gap is going to really improve. But then the question is, are judges embracing remote hearings going forward? Some have. The infrastructural deficiencies are actually making some to be discouraged. But the infrastructure is fast, the infrastructure provision is fast changing as well. So you end up seeing that it's going to be, even out of competition, you see that some judiciaries may not quickly embrace it, but by the time they see some other judiciaries doing the same thing, news will somehow filter around. You discover that you are antiquating yourself by not embracing technology. So I'm actually very certain that in the next 2-3 years now, and that's why I will keep pleading with the legal tech community, we cannot waste this crisis. There is a big opportunity to leapfrog the industry into something much better that adopts technology much better. And I think that's what that's one of the reasons why we're having this discussion. And then over-dependence on legal tech, will it affect advocacy? Absolutely not. But what I will say is advocacy as we knew it has changed, and it has changed for good. It's a new normal. In fact, you see, I was discussing with someone this morning, and I was wondering, even though I'm a tech person, and you know, when my colleagues have been asking for remote work before the pandemic, I was always saying that, no, I mean, how will I measure your productivity? How will I be sure you are delivering, you know, and all those. Then the pandemic came, and we all had to work remotely. But even after the lockdown, we refused to open to physical resumption anymore. Why? Because we've moved on. We have platforms that enable us, so I don't even need to run after anyone. Look, you do your work, there's a dashboard that actually takes it, that I can see how you are doing, so it's about productivity. Now, the same way, if you do not rely on legal tech, you'll be doing things the old way and you cannot catch up. So you will not be able to hire the best minds, because the best minds now, they rely on technology and they believe, look, your law firm should have to be technologically enabled for them to be able to operate. Look, those are some of the things you're going to be losing out on if you don't move on legal tech. But then we're not saying legal tech will replace everything. So you cannot over-depend on legal tech. It's just going to move your efficiency to a very high level. It's going to be a quantum leap. And that's why we're having these discussions. I'm really excited towards it. And the next 2-3 years, is going to be a completely different landscape entirely.
I just want to add one more thing to what Ope was saying, because I loved it. It's fantastic. You know, if you go back to that law firm that you were talking about with 10 people doing more, actually, I would say that with the tech that they operate, if they're doing it well, they will be a much faster moving law firm that actually hires more lawyers in the long run as they get more work and they're able to take on more people to actually flourish, rather than, you know, the 50-man law firm that's always done it in a certain way. So actually, I think that the tech can enable growth that employs more lawyers, rather than hindering or thinking that at any stage that tech is going to get rid of people's jobs or lawyers will become redundant. Actually, the firm that adopts tech will be the firm that grows quicker.
Nankunda, I don't know if I may just weigh in just quickly on what Jon and Ola was saying. I've been thinking about that question a lot regarding whether tech maybe either reduces advocacy or in some way perhaps affects advocacy. And again, I will perhaps just briefly recap what I had mentioned before, because the worry is, if you don't look at the culture, then if tech is adopted lock, stock, and barrel without really going underneath and breaking down to the why, then I strongly believe that we do have a risk of affecting advocacy. And I see that now, even in my own law firm, in the sense that I'll ask a lawyer to go look up a case. And the first place that they'll look for is looking for the case online. But we all know that although that the cases that are put online are intentionally uploaded online by someone. Now, there are several cases that don't get the chance, so to speak, to be uploaded online. Now, if a lawyer only knows that I can search for cases online without knowing that there's a library where you can be able to go and get that, then I strongly believe that ultimately the client is the one who will suffer. But so I still feel whenever we have this discussion that we need to still focus on people understanding why law tech is important, not to do away with the traditional modes or methods of doing work. I think if we have the discussion along that line, we may lose ourselves in the discussion, because if you eradicate or if you replace every traditional method or way of doing work without understanding why, as I've said, there is a chance that the future generations to come will lose all these other brilliant advocacy techniques that have been passed on, from generation to generation. And I do appreciate and understand, especially with the Commonwealth system, that although we see this in movies a lot, the truth is that for any Commonwealth lawyer, if you're going to court, you will rely on the law, and you'll find that the proceedings are in most instances boring, where you will rely on what you have pleaded in your pleadings, what you have submitted, rather than you going on the floor and speaking so passionately and convincing the judge just merely based on your charm and the rest. So I do strongly feel that this discussion has to be hard or tempered, in the sense that we need to look at things from both sides, that we still need the traditional ways of lawyering or of advocacy, but the technology is a facilitator to allow you to handle these traditional modes of advocacy in a smarter, faster, better way, rather than replacing them lock, stock, and barrel. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is a question that comes up a lot. And I think it's to do with that misunderstanding that is not addressing the why, and why would you use technology? There is no question that, people and companies and corporates and governments will always have disputes, and they have to be resolved in one way or another. And unfortunately, sometimes they have to go to court, and that is not going to disappear. However, if you have the means of researching faster, quicker, broader, that is a tool for you to be a better advocate. If you have the means of representing your client online through an online court or whatever, and giving them faster access to justice, that's a better outcome for your client. And that's one thing we haven't used the C word in this conversation yet today. We haven't talked about the client. And I think actually because it's all about the clients. This is, it's not just about the lawyer, it's about the clients. And what does that client, what does she want? What does she need? What are you there for? So I'm just going to go to Isaac actually on this, because I know Isaac has been undergoing a digital transformation process in his law firm. And so Isaac, I just wanted to ask you just to tell us a little bit about the impact of the digitization that you've done in your firm on your clients, and what their response has been, and if you've found out from them since you've been using the App4Legal.
Thank you, moderator. Well, I started thinking about technology basically as a response to COVID. So I subscribed to App4Legal October last year, and until now, I was given a thorough training on how to use it, and how to connect my clients on client portal. But unfortunately, I've not had a good response from the clients, and basically for the reasons I already said about the mindset. I think out of my retainer clients, only two were able to acknowledge and appreciate the firm was making. And out of the two, only one was able to use the client portal. The rest, they have not. And I've already decided that I'm going to do a client survey on what challenges they're facing and why they are not using the application. It's not something that I look to drop, not at all. I think instead I invest more in to use the technology. So I'm thinking of setting, asking one of my staff to have a thorough, maybe 2 months on field, really taking the notes from the clients and doing all and getting some recommendations, because I do not see the future in the next 50 years going back or remaining at the present situation in terms of digitization. I'm not looking at that. So I'm looking ahead, and I'm prepared to do the investment in that, because I know in the near future, I will reap the rewards. The rewards which we mentioned earlier, the rewards in terms of engaging with the client, offering them the best services they have never had. I'm accessible at any time than before. We chat, we get everything. So I think that much as I've not yet registered a substantial benefit from the App4Legal, but it does not rule out the best benefits from it. So I just said, why are my clients not responding? And then I should be able to address those concerns. But what COVID has taught everyone is that digital is a revolution in economy, is a revolution in social welfare, is a revolution in everything. And despite the fact that culture remains a strong factor of influence, but again, we need to know what are the members, as I said earlier, what are the members that are constituting the social structure of our communities. The biggest percentage, as I said, are the youth. And the youth, they are not they are not of my generation. They are .com members. they are on technology, and it is we who were born in analog, and we are still trying to transition, that we have to respond to that pressure. I think that technology is not a tool that can be undermined. We've seen what social media is doing. We've seen how many revolutions social media have influenced in Africa, particularly in the North Africa. So technology, I think, what we need is to have an appropriate legal framework that will protect the users, and from the law practice perspective, a platform and regulation that will allow even our clients to be in their mind that by sitting their home and probably being interviewed by a criminal investigative officer online, and I am online as the lawyer, and my client is online a lawyer, so that the three of us have this comfort that what we are doing is legal and everyone's rights is protected. So to conclude on your question, yes, the technology in our firm is on the way, is on the right way. It has no plan. We have no plans of dropping it. We only need how to customize it to our clients so that it can serve. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much, Isaac. That's really interesting, actually. And I suspect that for many firms around the world, the challenge hasn't been just for them internally to adopt technology, but also for almost training their clients on how to use it or how to see the value in it. Because as Kenneth was saying, with the cultural issue, everyone's in the same culture. Whether you're GC or private law firm or whatever, purchaser of legal services, you're also used to the traditional way of doing things. So I think that's quite an interesting item to add to the agenda that, Ope, you said the legal tech community needs to start engaging with some of these issues. And that's one of them. And I think that's a very useful observation for us to think about. Jon, did you have anything you wanted to throw in there?
No, it comes back to, which is really interesting, because at the beginning of this discussion, Nankunda, you asked me, what are the issues that lawyers sort of face when they talk to us? What are their biggest concerns? And my first thing is that we've always done it this way, is a phrase that you hear. Now, of course, in the client community is exactly the same. So, my biggest ask for all lawyers is that it's great that you adopt it, but if it's adopted with your clients in a meaningful way with good implementation, the tech will work so much better. Now, your tech provider has to give you the tools to make sure that everybody's there. It's not your job to sell the solution to your clients. However, it's part of your tech solution should be giving you all the tools that you need to say, we've always done it this way, but from tomorrow, we're going to do it that way. And I think that that's going to be part of the tech change and the enablement that's going to mean that success will happen for everybody. And we keep on talking about how cultures are so different, which is, in a vast continent of Africa, of course, everybody has to deal in a different way with their own client set. So that's kind of the most important thing here.
Thank you. And of course, culture is global in terms of legal services and delivery, administration of justice, as we had from our question from Michael about, courts in England and Wales looking to go back to opening up and not necessarily thinking about how they might do things differently and carry on with an online court system. ADR, of course, is another area that we haven't even touched on, but again, where it'd be easier to kind of have online solutions and that sort of thing. But ultimately, access to justice and making sure that clients get their, access to justice that is not too expensive, but that works for them, is going to be an interesting challenge. I'm now going to ask a couple of questions that have come up on our Q&A. And one is, do the speakers have any advice for younger associates on advocating for tech adoption within their own law firms and how they can be successful. Kenneth, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a question that I would really love to answer, because it's something that I discuss every day with my lawyers and with my students. Actually, had a class today just right before this, and one of the things we're discussing, I was teaching about patents, and we're looking at them as solutions to technological problems. And in this particular instance, I think every single lawyer has to understand, one, what we're talking about, the why and the how. Now, the two are important because if you look at the why you should adopt tech, as we mentioned, because it will make your work faster, it will make your work easier. And then, of course, if you do your work faster, if you do your work better and the client is happy, ultimately you're in good books with your employer, you're in good books with the client, you grow in the legal profession, and success follows. So it's a whole wheel that has to be followed, but you need to be intentional first about understanding why you as a lawyer, you need to embrace these technology tools. Now, the how, of course, ultimately, we also need to appreciate or understand that for most of us, we know the internet, either just sending a WhatsApp, going on Facebook, or just having a Google search. But it's difficult sometimes to get to know exactly where all these tools are, especially like apps like App4Legal. I think that's an initiative really that would be embraced, not only by so many firms in Uganda, but also by so many firms all over the world. So I think as a young lawyer, it is imperative and important for you to know where to access this information from. So signing up to networks like ALT is a sure way for you to be able to get access to this information and to know that there are apps like this that exist. Going online and coordinating with other lawyers in different jurisdictions also helps you to get you out of that box that you're in the jurisdiction that you operate in, to understand that this is how other lawyers in other jurisdictions are doing this and that. And then I think the most important thing is, putting in the time, putting in the 10,000 hours, being able to not only when you download these applications, but using them for what they're supposed to be used for. Because sometimes you find that you download an application which has, like, let's say 10 or 20 features that would help you, but then you find that you're focusing on one because you haven't taken the initiative to actually go and read the terms or actually find out exactly what the application does. So I think, as they say, the old adage was that, if you want to keep something from an African, you hide it in a book. So that's the same thing that applies here. If you want to keep something from a young lawyer, you hide it in tech. So in order for you to be able to, to truly harness that, you need to be able to unpack it. And that requires you putting in the work to be able to understand why the application exists and understanding how it is going to help you in your work. I think that's really the best advice that I would give.
Ope, do you want to say something on that?
Okay, thank you very much. I think I just align with Kenneth on that, really. You need to first find yourself in places where these topics are discussed. You need to understand the why. Don't just jump into it without knowing the intricacies. You need to understand, you need to do some research, you need to study. And one of the easiest ways doing that is what I say, attending webinars like this. Deliberately look out for them. You can check them on LinkedIn. And one of the best ways actually to join ALT network, because you'll be notified of such webinars. But you need to understand it, because I have seen a number of times where people go ahead into, everybody's going tech, and then they went to buy tools, buy things, invest heavily in gadgets that they ended up not using because it's not suited or it's not suitable for their own practice. So you need to understand the whole space, and then you need to understand what you want to do, and then you can interrogate those tools and be sure it solves your problem. And then I also want to say this, that it may not be a one-day event. We also, digitization and digital transformation takes time. So you may not easily see the results immediately, but it's a consistent daily improvement in how you operate. And then in a matter of months, you look back and you're able to say, wow, I have moved extensively from where I was before now. But the starting point is getting into the community and doing research on that?
Yeah, just adding on to that, Ope, because it's really interesting. I think that associates have, they come from law schools and they have a very pragmatic approach as soon as they enter into a law firm to rise above other associates or junior partners or whoever within your law firm. If you were to look at tech enablement and how it's going to aid the firm, doing some research, as everyone has said, and then representing that research in why we should be doing any tech solution that you think is the right one, will make sure that your career goes that much faster in terms of that you care about the law firm that much and what you're doing in order to hopefully save time, effort, and money, essentially. So I think a junior associate has so much to gain from looking at tech solutions and then sort of talking through them to senior partners or managing partners.
Thanks, John. You know, at the beginning of this conversation, I think we were talking about sort of awareness raising and training, etc. And I did mention very quickly the legal education angle, and hopefully we have in plan a future webinar that's going to be looking at, you know, legal education, specifically the role of legal education in facilitating, you know, in churning out the lawyers of the future, if you like, which is a really big issue. So Kenneth has talked to us about his training of judges and indeed students as well on this issue. And we've also got a very long question in the Q&A, which it's not that long actually. It's very specifically about the Nigerian law school and how COVID-19 forced the school to embrace virtual classes. But the issue of technology may be for the efficiency of the firm, but because clients are not educated and not interested in tech, that might affect the outcome of their cases. There's sort of two separate questions there. But Kenneth, I think you wanted to answer part of that question. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, sure. I think that was a really good question because, again, it ties into everything that we're saying. If you don't skill lawyers, if you don't skill the users of this tech, then ultimately the ecosystem will be one-sided in the sense that it's only just a few people, and that the particular legal innovation will not be able to have the impact that it should have. So I strongly do think and feel that for lawyers in particular, but even going beyond lawyers, because we have only been given access to these technologies just recently, there is a need, at least for the future generation, for them to have access to these technologies from the get-go, from the time they start school and class, understanding that this is the internet, this is how you can be able to use it. It's not just for messaging your friends or this, but it's for teaching yourself all these things. And, you know, for people like us, like Nankunda, you and I have had several discussions about this in the past about personal development. I started meditating, doing all these things because I found all these tools online. So rather than have a physical teacher, I was able to have gurus and teachers from wherever they are. Some of them are dead even, but I'm learning all these things because this is how you're supposed to be using the internet. But it's easier said than done if we, the people that are influencing policy, don't have policies that actually teach young people from when they are toddlers that you can use the internet for this purpose and for this purpose. So even with law schools for young lawyers, I strongly believe that for young lawyers at the bar, whether in Nigeria, whether in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Rwanda, it doesn't matter. But law schools should be able to teach young lawyers these tricks, so to speak, because the truth is, it will be impractical to ask a young lawyer who has just left school to come to the legal market and compete with a lawyer that's been here for 30, 40 years and has already established their name on the market. And this is something that young lawyers in my jurisdiction have asked me, and I hope I can use this platform as an opportunity to answer that as well. Technology has allowed me to be who I am, in the sense that I have prospered because I have embraced technology, but by understanding why I'm embracing technology. So I think every young lawyer needs to understand that as a young lawyer, the cards or the life is already stacked against you, in the sense that people already have a leg up. So in order for you to actually compete or even outcompete these people, technology gives you the avenue, first of all, since these are all new things, but because everyone in the world now is talking about technology. So there is a need for technology lawyers, there's a need for intellectual property lawyers, but outside that as well, the lawyer who uses the technology and is able to work smarter will, in every respect, perhaps jump all the hurdles that all the lawyers had to face, where you have to take 30 years of legal practice in order for your name to be known. For those of us that have embraced technology, but understanding again why we're using the tools that we're using and using it the right way, that is a brilliant way for a young lawyer to be able to establish themselves without having to spend the time, the rigors that other lawyers had to go through. Because the other discussion that we don't have is about mental health. And sometimes because the traditional notion is that as a young lawyer, you need to get into office at 5 a.m. and leave at midnight or 1. But that compromises your mental health, that compromises your relationships with your family. So technology has the potential to deal with all those things where you're able to still spend time with your families, able to do things that you want to do, but also move ahead in your career, move ahead in your law firm by embracing all these technologies that we're discussing.
Thanks, Kenneth. I also wanted to add that, in fact, because of the sort of fourth industrial revolution or digitization of across other industries, a lawyer who's more tech savvy will be a better lawyer to fintech companies, to edutech companies, to insurtech companies, to health techs, because they need legal advice, but they need a lawyer who understands what they're doing and why they're doing it. So if you come with a sort of old-fashioned way of looking at things, you won't necessarily get it. Many of those industries and sectors are grappling with regulation or lack of appropriate legal environments in which they're operating. They hear of governments passing laws that ban cryptocurrency, for example, or ban all sorts of activity because they don't understand it. And so the easiest thing for the regulator to do is to prohibit it and then wait till there's enough pressure. Now, it's lawyers who help with creating the right environment, who write the legislation, who will have the interaction with the regulators about technology and what it's doing in terms of fintech, in terms of health tech. So apart from anything else, it's basically the same thing as understanding your sector that you're working in and your clients. Being tech savvy makes you a better lawyer for the clients that you're trying to serve. Sorry.
Can I just
yeah.
something in there too? Because it's important we take the clients into consideration, really. And what I say is that your digital transformation should take the needs of your clients into consideration. So you also need to understand your clients. There's the general assumption that all your clients need is just to win their cases or get results, but it's not only that. A number of times, the way you even serve your clients also matters. In some cases, some clients just want prompt feedback, prompt responses to their request. But even going further, something you can give them exceptional service. And I usually like giving example with Netflix that, okay, I watch movies, but Netflix looks at what I do, the kind of movies I watch, and then it recommends one for me. Now, that same service can actually be taken into legal practice, wherein you have something like Google Alert that tells you about your client. If there's anything, any new thing or any news about your client, you get to know it, and then you can position your service. You can position service to even serve the client. With that, the client will know that, oh, okay, you are taking him with much more as a one client as a special client one, and then you are able to even give more service and have that client on retainership. So let's not look at digital transformation only in terms of how it helps me in court, but how it helps you to engage your clients. How easy is it for clients to access you? How much reports do you get from clients? Do you give your clients so that when you're sending them your invoice, they know, oh, you've been working consistently. Now you need tools to help you achieve that and accomplish that and monitor it on a continuous basis. And these are some of the things that digital transformation brings on the table.
Thank you very much, Ope. I'm going to ask all of you panelists a sort of final question, because I'm aware that we're nearly at the end. And if anybody has another burning question they want to put in the Q&A, please go ahead. But this final question is really, what advice do you have for lawyers that are looking to digitally transform their practice using technology? And I'm going to ask Isaac to kick off on that one, please.
Yeah, I think that the first thing is that lawyers should develop the appetite for technology, and I wouldn't recommend or advise that a law firm or a lawyer should just go for technology because the other is it. First of all, and identify what is technology serving you. Is it in the client best, or it is your firm? Is it for your convenience or for the convenience of your client, or both of you? Then after that, when you do such an assessment, then it is easier for you to make a determination that you are going digital. And it is that determination that will give you resilience in terms of costs, in terms of enduring with the client's attitudes towards the technology, so that you really gain patience because you understand what the technology is serving in terms of interest involved. So I think that the lawyers, or even including the younger lawyers, first they need to develop the appetite for the technology, and what technology is for them. Then I'm sure that they will have no option other than going for it. As I said earlier, I don't see our communities remaining at the same at the present level. My 12-year child teaches me how to use my smartphone. So you can imagine that. So I can see what kind of my daughter is going to be in the next 10 years. She's not going to be using these traditional means, not at all. So the future to me is technology, irrespective of its ills that comes. I don't want to believe or convince anyone that that every tool or system of working is perfect. Nothing that is perfect in this world. But you just have to agree to to change as the world changes. If you don't change with the world, then you'll be left behind. So today, we are in a digital age, and we have to find it. If not, we'll be left behind.
Thank you, Isaac. Jon, can I ask you the same question? What advice would you give to a lawyer trying to digitize, thinking about digitizing?
Yeah, look, start today is my biggest thing. Look at what interests you. Look at what your firm or your practice area is lacking. Get demos, speak to people. We're so happy at App4Legal right now to run through a real working demo so that you can understand exactly what our tech does, how it's going to help you, how it's going to help your department, how it's going to help your firm, how it's going to help everybody. We love to give demos, and I urge everybody who's listening today to reach out through the website, fill in a form, start your free trials, look around, start to get interested, and start to get as much knowledge as you possibly can, because a lot of good is out there. There's also a lot of clutter. So it's important to find the good stuff and avoid the clutter. But start today, because tomorrow you're going to be just as busy as you were yesterday.
Thanks, Jon. Ope?
Okay, thank you, Nankunda. I think I will quickly quote Didier Bonnet. He said, "The only wrong move when it comes to digital transformation is not to make any move at all. It starts with the mind. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. You may make mistakes, that's not an issue. But the first thing is to subscribe to newsletters. Subscribe to legal tech newsletters, be on platforms that discuss technology. Just deliberately find yourself in that community. As events unfold, you will pick one thing or the other, and then see how to implement them in your firm. And then the next thing is, I'm always quick to say that there's a difference between digitalization and digitization. But we can't we can't talk much about that now. But you need to build your mind in that area. You need to research. And then, as Jon has said, watch videos, watch demos, look at different options. And then as events unfold, you will find yourself even becoming a consultant in digital transformation, because that's actually where legal practice is going into. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ope. Kenneth?
Yeah, sure. I think, Nankunda, you had already mentioned this before, but I strongly feel that people fear what they don't understand. And I've come to learn that so fear brings perceptions, and with every perception, there is a deception. So the perception is that legal tech, is only for particular lawyers, is only for particular law firms, it's expensive, yada, 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 and all the rest. But if you actually look at the good, or how much further you will advance if you actually embrace these tools, something like legal analytics. I think for international conferences that we go for, there's always this hurrah over international firms versus local firms, and how international firms treat local firms. But the truth is that for most of the local firms, we don't pay attention to detail, in the sense that we don't want to employ tools like legal analytics to be able to understand, look, this is an area of your practice, an area of your business that will help you perhaps be able to speak to your clients better. I liked how Isaac analyzed how he's using the legal tool, in the sense that he wants now to go to his clients and conduct a survey to understand, okay, what are your challenges? How can I be able to assist you, be able to use this tool that I have invested in for you? And that's a very good move, because that shows that as Africans, we are now seeing the importance of paying attention to detail, the importance of breaking things down. I know this may open a can of worms of beef, but if you're looking at, let's say, the discussion we have over a meat diet vis-a-vis a plant-based diet, I think now there's a lot of information now that shows that plants have been sidelined for too long, in the sense that they took away the gist of why, for example, you should eat your carrots, vegetables, and the rest, because of the propaganda that meat is the only source of these tools. So it's also really the same thing. The propaganda that, that tech is only for a particular elite class and is not for everyone. No, the truth is that if we're to operate internationally, if we're to globalize the way that global practice is supposed to be, we need to embrace legal tech, but we need to understand why we're embracing legal tech. And in that sense, we shall be using tools like legal analytics, using these forward-thinking communications tools that all these companies are coming up with. And that way we're able to service our clients better, we're able to service our communities better. But most importantly, and this is something that really excites me, and that's why I get up every morning to go to work, the possibility that I can be able to make a difference, especially with policy. What tech has done is to open up a whole new world in regards to advising governments. Look, that, instead of charging OTT tax, for example, like in Uganda, why don't you do this? Focusing on regulating data protection. These are the reasons why. So as a lawyer, for me, I'm really interested in those things. And when with the few years that I have on this earth, I'm standing in front of judges of the Supreme Court, training them and letting them know what the law says on taking electronic evidence. I'm really proud of that, but I could not have done that if I had not opened my eyes and embraced technology and seen it for what it is. So my advice to every law firm, every lawyer, embrace technology, but the way it's supposed to be embraced. Once you do that, we shall compete and even outcompete the people that have been taking these jobs from us or moving further from us. Thank you.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you so much. We have come to the end of our time today and our webinar. Fantastic discussion. I mean, we still have some questions that have been popping into the Q&A. And I think it's, we've covered most of the issues that are raised here. And I just want to say really that that little theme of technology taking our work away from us. What will we be as lawyers if we don't have books and big offices and that sort of thing? And not really thinking about it gives you the choice about whether you want to have big books and big offices. Using technology means you can decide if you really need those things and what you need them for. So I'm really grateful to all of you. I'm really grateful, App4Legal. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to do this with you guys. Thank you very much, Ope and LawPavilion, and all your innovation. It's always an inspiration, and it's wonderful to be involved always with you. Kenneth, thank you so much for your time, as always. Isaac, pleasure to meet you, and well done with being so creative and innovative. And I'm sure you'll be successful with your plans for client engagements. We will, as the Alt Network, take on the ongoing challenge and pleasure of facilitating these conversations, because that's what we started. And that's why we're here to bring more and more people dealing with legal tech and law and tech on the continent of Africa, and always having these multi-jurisdictional conversations, which is what we're there for. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I wish you all a very good afternoon and the rest of the day. Thank you.
Everybody, and thank you, Nankunda.
Pleasure.